I'm very interested in the difference between what people claim they've said and what they've actually said, and and then the difference between what somebody has actually said and what they meant to say, because people can, of course, make mistakes. And should people then be held accountable for the things they actually said? It's questionable. People can also say things that can be plucked out of context, and that can then be held over them. In the case of Nigel Farage, Farage keeps saying, I mean, if you put this in the context of the sort of things that were said by Hitler in the rise of Nazi Germany, the demonizing of one particular group, the Jews, to explain the economic problems that Germany faced during the 1920s and 1930s, the scapegoating and so on. Well, Farage and Tommy Robinson have done exactly the same thing to the Muslims, as Baroness Varsi keeps pointing out. This Islamophobia is something that has become the preserve of the right wing, and that includes the right wing of the Conservative Party. But Farage is interesting because Farage is personally in denial. Tommy Robinson is interesting because his supporters are in denial. Both Farage and Tommy Robinson are supposed to be promoting a non-violent solution, having established this Islamophobic narrative. So there's curious and contradictory rhetoric that's going on. Farage, the architect of Brexit, a polarising figure in British politics, has consistently claimed that he is above promoting violence. However, his actions and his words paint a different picture. And the ambiguity, the contradictions, are interpreted by his followers. Now, at the moment, I believe he's in Hong Kong, evading any responsibility for what's going on in the UK, positioning himself even more as a detached observer rather than an active participant or an instigator, not unlike Tommy Robinson, who's in Cyprus, a detached observer, standing back watching the chaos, well, standing back from the bonfire after they've lit the match. This stance of non-involvement is consistent with his public narrative that Farage has never promoted violence or was favouring a peaceful political change through democratic means. But I just want to point to one particular statement that he made when he was in America, and he said that he would be forced to don khaki if Brexit doesn't go the way he hoped. This remark, made in the heat of the Brexit debate, implies a readiness to resort to more militant means if democratic processes failed to deliver what he wanted. The image of donning khaki is loaded with military resonance. It suggests a willingness to take up arms, a stark contrast with his claim of never advocating violence. Think about it. What is he actually saying there? In the United States, where there is already an undercurrent of militancy, particularly in far-right groups, awaiting a call to action, the ambiguity of Farage's words. They allow him to maintain plausible deniability, but they are calculated to appeal to his base in a way that encourages more radical action. And I think that particular statement crosses the line. It makes it almost impossible for him to what's he doing? A Katie Price moment, donning khaki. What sort of khaki is he going to don? Khaki underwear. There is only one khaki, He knows exactly what he's saying. He's talking about fighting, and he's talking about leading his troops. If that is not a statement of violence, I would like to know what is. Yes, it's got ambiguity smothering it. But I think the gloves are off in that statement. And that then makes everything else, it colours everything else that we hear from Farage. This weasel with a forked tongue. There we are, we've got two animals together, the weasel and the snake. And this was calculated and done outside the UK. Well, I've never promoted violence in the UK, he might say. Well, that's true. I don't think there's any expressions that come anywhere close to that from things that he said in the UK. But outside the UK, in America, he feels, I feel liberated. Tossing off the clothes he's wearing and squeezing into a little khaki uniform and playing soldiers. That's the issue. Leading his troops. Let's listen to what he's got to say while he's in Hong Kong. Because when he's outside the UK, he feels suddenly energized, emboldened, freer with his words. But he can't claim not to be promoting violence, because that is now on record. And this sort of inconsistent stance, it isn't new. While he publicly denounces violence or says, I don't like violence, his rhetoric has often been charged with aggressive nationalism and populism, which can incite violent reactions. For example, during the Brexit campaign, when he unveiled his famous Breaking Point poster, that itself a lie, of course, which depicted a line of refugees actors creating an atmosphere of fear and xenophobia. Although not an overt call to violence, it's a clear example of how his rhetoric inflamed tensions and contributed to a hostile environment, to allude to the Home Office. Farage's claim that he's never promoted violence needs to be examined in the context of these statements. While he may not have explicitly called for violence while he was on UK soil, donning khaki, the Breaking Point poster, his language and imagery border on the provocative, walking a fine line that can easily be interpreted by his base as endorsing extreme responses. Tommy Robinson, to further illustrate the point, we can compare Farage's rhetoric with that of Tommy Robinson, a far-right activist in the UK who's well known for his anti-Islamic views and has a history of promoting violence either indirectly or directly. And he's made numerous statements that can be seen as encouraging violence in the past. Does he do so now? He's more careful now. But he's frequently warned of an impending civil war in Britain, as has Elon Musk. That is about violence, is it not? Fueled by Islamic extremism and immigration. No wonder the shops are closed. Robinson's rhetoric is more overt than Farage. He's not as clever as Farage, yet they share the same commonality in their ability to mobilize a base that feels disenfranchised and threatened by change. And they articulate that change in terms of the small boats. The small boats is a small issue which has been trumped up, no pun intended, which has been trumped up by these people to become very significant. In fact, if you look at the reality is quite different. The reality is that the small boats are as nothing compared to the the recent expansion and necessary expansion of legal immigration, which has now significantly gone down, and and you think, well, you know, why is that? That's because of the actions taken by the last government, which has reduced legal immigration by a third. We've still got huge vacancies that need filling in the NHS, the police force, teaching. Where are those people going to come from? If you listen to Labour, they're going to come from people in the UK who are going to be trained. That's not going to be possible in the next year. So are we still going to have these vacancies open? We still need immigration, because immigration is part of living in a capitalist society. If the birth rate is going down, which it is in the UK, if the aging population is going up, which it is in the UK, we need people to manage the basic public services which we offer and which we depend on. And if we don't have the manpower ourselves, we must get it from elsewhere. And the illegal migration, as defined by Suella Braverman's laws, the illegal migration is mostly, and the cost of that is mostly due to the hostile environment, the slowing down of the Home Office, the failure to process people who come across here and claim asylum, who could otherwise be contributing to our public health, engaged in filling some of these vacancies which need filling, and paying back to our society the goodwill that they came here offering. Because the majority of people coming here by small boats are coming here because all other routes to the UK are being closed. Why are they coming here? Because they speak English, sometimes better than some of the natives. Why are they coming here? Because they have friends and associates and family in the UK. They've got skin in the game. They're interested in being here. And instead of welcoming this positivity of people who want to be part of our society, we treat them with suspicion. We encourage the right wing to riot and to attack them. And Tommy Robinson produces his own version of Tommy Robinson has published his own version of the Quran. Is that not absurd? Robinson's followers describe him as peaceful but angry, a sentiment that mirrors how some of Farage's supporters might view him. The notion of being peaceful but angry is a dangerous one, as it suggests that violence could be justified if his anger were further provoked. A line of thinking that has led and will lead to real-world consequences. Yes, I'm peaceful. I don't promote violence, but I'm angry. What utter rot. And every so often I see in the comments, I've never seen you so angry. Anger is a vocal mannerism, maybe. If you notice me being angry, it's a vocal mannerism. And I can as easily sound angry as I can sound amused while I'm talking. I'm not particularly angry. I'm fairly placid. I get annoyed. It's not really anger, is it? And, and I'm annoyed by Farage. And I'm annoyed by Tommy Robinson because I expected more of both of them. Andrew Tate, I don't know much about Andrew Tate, I'm afraid. I've tried to find out stuff about Andrew Tate, and I find him disagreeable and rather dirty. And I find it extraordinary that an elected politician like Farage should be getting information from a sex offender. Surely an elected politician gets information from reliable sources. Farage gets his information from a sex offender. Stop and think about that. The implications of Farage's comments, particularly his comment about khaki, cannot be overlooked. Farage is a person with a considerable brain, and he's pandering to his base. He's pandering to the basic, to his basic followers. He's pandering to stupidity because he thinks that that's clever, because he thinks that that's popular. I've said once before, Farage needs to grow up. I'm saying it again. He needs to grow up and get down to the job that he has now been elected to do. And anything else, except for arrest, is irrelevant. And I'm sure, if he continues in this stupidity, he's somebody who should be thrown out of Parliament because he's not behaving in the manner that befits, say, an MP in Westminster. Doesn't matter which party he belongs to. To use Westminster to further his publicity, self-publicity, is not the job that he's been elected to, and is contemptuous of Westminster. I don't know whether it technically contempt of Parliament, but it's certainly a contemptuous approach to being a parliamentarian. And he needs to think very carefully, because I cannot be the first, and I certainly won't be the last to say it. His approach to Parliament, his approach to his job needs to be significantly more respectful than we've seen. It's about navigating the complexities of populism and the impact on society. And not only does Farage have to navigate this, but we now have to navigate it with him, because it's not something that can be put back in the bottle. It's out there. And Farage is highly associated with it. The rhetoric of people like Farage, Tommy Robinson, Andrew Tate, and the full implications of their words and their hints and their prompts to their base. They need to take responsibility for what they are doing. And maybe they need to be held responsible.